Hello everyone, welcome back to session 9. In this video, we'll discuss about async await. Quick recap, in last session, we discussed about promises. If you have not seen that, I would highly recommend to go through that before moving forward. Promises helped us handle asynchronous operations more elegantly by avoiding callback hell and allowing for cleaner, more readable code with structured error handling. And async await takes this a notch above that by providing a more synchronous like syntax, makes asynchronous code appear almost linear, and that improves code readability, maintainability, and error handling. Before we write some code, let's understand what these terms mean. An async function is a special type of function in JavaScript that allows you to work with promises in a more synchronous manner. The await keyword is used inside an async function. It can only be used with promises, and when you place an await before a promise, it pauses the execution of the function until the promise is resolved. With that, now let's dive into the code. So first, let's write a function that return a promise, right? So let's call that fetch data, and that fetch data, what it does is just return a new promise, right? And with a resolve, comma reject methods, and then just call set timeout. In this, let's create an arrow function and let's resolve the object with one as the data coming out of it, and let's resolve it after 1000 millisecond, right? That means like it will resolve after 1 second. Now this is a function that is returning a promise, right? So previously how we were handling this was fetch data, and then we were doing a dot and dot then, right? Rather than this, now let's write a async function which is actually going to utilize fetch data, right? So async function, and let's call is get data, and that get data method is actually going to utilize the data which is coming from our uh, fetch data method, right? So now I can just write await and then just fetch data. Await, as I said, can be placed in front of any of the um, promises that you are getting, right? So now this await is actually waiting for that particular fetch data promise to get resolved, and then after that I can just write down console.log and then this data, right? And now I need to of course call this get data method to actually write it down on console, right? So now let's run the node server. You see this, it's printing 1, right? Let's add one explicit log to see when exactly it was started and if it was waiting for some time. So if you see started came first and then after 1 second one came in. Now let's take the previous example that we did do in promises, and let's rewrite it using async await so that we understand exactly how it benefits us, right? So let me comment this piece of code. Let's move down. So still there are functions that are going to keep on returning promises. We need those, right? There is nothing that we are going to do there. What changes is basically this piece of execution, right? So now let's create async function here, right? So async, uh, rather than deleting that, let me just write it down first. Async function, right? um all data, and this data first let's do a data 1, right? That is going to come from our fetch data, right? First, after fetch data is going to come, then our process data is going to come, right? That is going to come from our process data, and that will take data 1 definitely. Then after the process data is going to come, the data 2 object is going to come like that, similar to this. Fetch data 2, right? And process data is going to get passed to this, and now after this process data 2 is going to come. Now you see the thing, right? That uh, everything here has been actually very simplified and it looks very synchronous in nature, right? So We'll discuss about that in in a second. And then finally the result is going to come when I'm going to await save data, and in this I'm going to pass process data 2. Now once this is done, let's console log this to our result to our this. Now I'm not going to call, let's first get the response what we had previously, right? Wait. Okay, there's error, right? Because remember doing a reject. Yeah, rather than reject, let's make it resolve, and let's pass in process data 2, process data 2. Save this again. So we ran the previous code, and now we can see that the data is coming as saved. This time let's close this one, comment this one, and let's call all data function, and let's see if we get the same response back. We don't, because of this process data cannot access process data before initialization. The name should be process data 1 or something like that, otherwise it will create this problem. Yeah, function name. And let's mark it process data 1, and let's pass that same thing here. And let's mark it process data 2, and let's pass the same thing here. Now let's restart. Fingers crossed, we should see the output coming up, exactly the same output which we got previously. Now you see the difference between this and this, right? Though this helped us reach to a specific level of readability, but await beats it all, right? So after using await, you will be able to read through the code more elegantly, right? So this is what the benefit of using async await is. Another thing is like how we did error handling in while we were using promises, right, with a dot catch keyword. We can do the same thing here, but rather than that, it's always good to put everything in try catch. If let's say if any of this resulted back in an exception, right, let's console log that error happened. Okay, now let's do this. If I restart right now, it should be printing the same thing again, right? And this time what I'm going to do is, while doing the initial call itself, the API call, right, the API calls usually are something which can fail, right? And this time you'll see that error coming up directly, right? So that's the how you should handle error handling in this. Let me just format it a bit. And this gives a more elegant way of basically writing your asynchronous code, and it's more readable in nature because you can understand how exactly the code is working, right? That's the benefit of using async of it. That's it for this video. Next video we have keep on calling out that fetch API, right? Like to call, we are just here we are saying that const data 1 equals to data 1. Next video we are going to discuss the fetch API and how we can make an API call using that fetch API, right? Thanks for watching. See you in next video.